Yeah, hi. So, sorry for the little interruption in the middle. There are some connectivity issues on my end. Okay, so let's resume from where we had just left it. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to start converting our project bit by bit from the JavaScript that it was in into TypeScript. So, in routes also, let's just convert these. This part is easy. You can just simply take any JS file, just rename it to TS and it is valid TypeScript, just as we had seen till now. Okay. Um, then what we'll do is we'll change our require calls into import calls because requires are synchronous in nature, imports are asynchronous in nature. It improves the startup speed of your app. And going into the future, ECMAScript 6 defines the new import and export syntax. That is what we should be using in the next few years. TypeScript already supports that by default because it is actually TypeScript is not a superset of ECMAScript 5, it's a superset of ECMAScript 2016. So anything that is available in ECMAScript 2016 is available in TypeScript. So we'll use the import export in that format. Okay. Now let's do is import root as from and our teachers.js. Now, like we had written exports.route equal to root, simply what we'll also do is export root. Okay. And we will remove this teacher root from here. We'll do the same thing with students. We will do is export this root, and in here we will import from students. It will do is root as student root. Okay, and remove the student root require from here. So all our requires are gone. This export.root equal to root, this also you can remove. In teachers export.root as root, this also you can remove. Okay, and then just build this with npm and see what is the result that we get. Let's see. So in roots teachers.js, you see actually the exports are like this: exports.root equal to root. It's in this format only. Okay. The way we had exported root, the syntax remains the same as the currently supported Node.js syntax. So although we have written this as export root, what actually becomes is exports.root equal to root. Okay, the way we originally had defined it in JavaScript, it becomes the same thing. Now let's import router as well. Import router from Express. Same stuff in students. Yep. Now we'll see that route is of the type router now automatically because we imported router as a type and we created a route using the route constructor. So now route is of the root type. Okay, so types are automatically set here. And I want to make sure that say here when we write res dot something You see there is better autocomplete available to you. Earlier in normal JavaScript you will see that it autocompletes with a lot of stuff. If you look at the JavaScript file, you do res dot, there's a lot of stuff in the autocomplete, because what it does is now everything that is not bold, these are all, if you go to any line, you will say that how this autocomplete is formed in WebStorm. It just makes available all kinds of objects and functions that it can find in the entire tree of your source code. Any function like toSource, toString, these functions exist inside any object. There's some stub functions are available, so it just gives all random stuff inside your autocomplete. Many of these functions are not even actually available in the object. Okay, when you use TypeScript, the benefit is that when you are doing something like res dot, you see that only those functions that are available available to you. Those functions that are not available inside the res object are not available here. You can make this type even stricter by using the request type here and res as response type. Okay.
एक मिनट आ जाओ, मैं बता दूंगा कौन सा बटन डाउन करना है.
So you can use the request and response types from Express and set the rec and res object to that type. And then if we look at the autocomplete res dot, so you get complete autocomplete like you have in Java and C#. You have send takes body as an argument. It creates an object of response type. You have set header which takes name, value, number. Very comprehensive autocomplete you get when you're using TypeScript in large projects, because if you look at it and you click on control plus click on send, you see that there is an interface called send. It takes a body, returns a response in that format. Okay. So students, teachers, we have converted all of that, and const app we have created this, right? Now let us write our script to run the server. How to start the server we'll do is node dist slash server.js, because this is the file that we need to actually run. Dist slash server.js is the file we need to run. Restart. What we need to do is we want to run npm run build. So undo build before we start. Okay, now we can simply do npm start. It is going to build it first and then it is going to run it. Yeah, so server is running on 2345 now, and just go and check it out. It's going to be the same stuff for now, what we had built, teachers and students, like this. Okay, so now what we are actually running is not our code directly. We are transpiling it to JavaScript and we are running that JavaScript code from there. Okay. You can also assign the type application to your app. In that case, what happens is inside the use function, you will see that you can only use a request handler inside the second argument. Okay, if you set a string here, you will get some errors here. Okay, because inside app.use we can either set if you just simply set a string here, in that case the second argument must be of type request handler, and root extends the request handler, so you can use a root here. Okay, that is fine, but if you change it with a number, you will see that you get some problem here. Okay, there is some error because students is not of type request handler, so it has to be string and plus request handler. You student root like this. So this way a lot of common errors, if they are present inside your app, they automatically get removed because types are enforced. App is of type application, which means inside the use function you can only use certain type of things, you cannot use any random things here. Similarly inside app.get as well, like you do app.get, so get can take name and that has to be of iRoot matcher. Okay, so these way you can enforce a lot of types, and most of the packages, commonly used packages that we use, you will see that inside the types repository, for example if you're using Sequelize, there is a package type slash Sequelize which contains all the type definitions for the Sequelize library. If you're using jQuery in your front-end projects, there is type slash jQuery which contains all the type definitions of jQuery. Okay, so most of the commonly used libraries, you will see that type definitions for them are available in the definitely typed repository. Okay, now in addition to that, if we write our code in purely in TypeScript and we create some interfaces and we create some complex types of our own, or we use generic types, those are automatically deleted from our JavaScript code, because JavaScript does not have interfaces, and also in the transpiled code those things are not present when we publish this thing. We want to make sure that our TypeScript declarations and definitions are present inside our project, so that later on when somebody is going to use this TypeScript project and they want to use our interfaces, in that case we can also publish our declaration files. So how does that work? Let us take a look. Let us for example consider this, that there is inside src, let's create a directory called models. Okay, inside models let's create this TypeScript file called person, and what we do is export interface person, and inside person we have name as a string. Okay, so we exported this person interface here. Now inside students.ts, this students, let us turn it into a person array. Okay, and teachers also, let us turn it into a person array. Okay, you'll see another one of the advantages is that if you add a new object which contains let's say see, first of all you get an error here because this object which contains full name someone, this is not a complete implementation of this person interface, which means here itself I will get an error. Okay, so this teachers is a person array, the students is a person array, which is going to make sure that whenever I add any item into my student array, or whenever I add any item into my teacher array, they are going to be of this particular type. They are going to implement name, they will have a name key which contains a string. Now let's say I add something like this. Okay, an age parameter, then again you will see that you will get a problem here because your interface does not contain the age type here like this. Okay, so we're going to see how we can make some additional optional items we can add into our objects. Later on we're going to see that, but like this we have created it. Okay, so teacher is a person array and so on, and if I want to say go to root.get id, so what we do in that case is we send teachers we have to rec.params.id, and inside that you see automatically complete autocomplete comes up with proper types and all. Inside every teacher object we have name available, so name is available to us like this. Okay, if you write something like this age here, you know that there's an underline will come up because this property age does not exist inside any of these teachers, so you cannot put that. But if you write name here, it's going to be of type string. Where is the definition that exists? All of that is going to be available to you if you're using say WebStorm or Visual Studio. In those kind of IDs, that is available to you. Okay, so let's run this. So you can see that how this is working. Name of the first teacher comes up like this. Okay, now if you look at the dist folder and you look at models and person.js, you see that this does not contain anything at all, because in our person.js file, person.ts file, there was an interface, and interfaces are not even present in JavaScript. So person.js file does not contain anything at all. Okay, there is really nothing inside this file. If you want to make sure that your TypeScript declarations are present inside your dist folder as well, what you can do is you can set this in your tsconfig file. You can set declaration to true. You set declaration to true, and if we build it again, we'll have to remove allow.js because our source must be purely in TypeScript if we want to use declarations. So we just run build. You'll see inside dist there is something like model.d.ts gets generated. Model.d.ts is the person declaration file, and it contains the interface person inside it, and there is person.js, which just like we saw, it does not contain any data. So what is the advantage of having declaration files is that I'll just show a project of mine that it's open source. You can check out that project also. So it's a project that allows us to add Google Analytics to any Express app. Okay. So there is this there's this library. What it does is we can use Google Analytics in any Express app simply like this. We can do app.use expressga and add a Google Analytics ID, and it will show us analytics like this. This project also I have created it in TypeScript. Now my project, my library could be used by somebody who is writing their server in JavaScript, or it could be used by somebody who is writing their server in TypeScript as well, right? So if they're using TypeScript, they should be able to use all my types, and they should be able to get the benefit of all the type safety of my library. And if somebody is using JavaScript, for them obviously it's like a plain JavaScript project, and they can use it the way they want to. So here you'll see that inside the let me do is let me just use this module in my own project right now. So I'll do is npm install expressga middleware in my project here. Okay. So now to use this, what I have to do is I will have to do const expressga equal to require expressga middleware, or I can use import exports like it is available in TypeScript. I can do import from expressga middleware, and what can I import? Expressga. Okay. And I can do app dot use. So if I can do expressga, and inside that I can write a string like UA some. These are the kind of Google Analytics codes are like this. Okay. Now if I want to create some kind of an event in my app, I can do expressg object and dot event I can call like this. That's how we can do is take this, and first of all create it like this. Then I can do const expga like this. Now when I go to this root app.get slash, so there I want to add an extra additional middleware to create a Google Analytics event, and do it like this exp ga. Let me just define it before dot some event, and inside that event I can create an object, and inside that I will have to define something of the type GA event options. Okay, so I have to give a category. Let's say my event is the category. We'll see complete autocomplete is there. Some label is some string again. To give a value, let's say 10. Okay, right. So if you look at expressGA.event, now this expects GA event options, and GA event options is actually an interface. So how does my project understand this interface? Because when I build TypeScript into JavaScript, interfaces should go away. So what has happened is, inside my Express GA middleware module, in my dist folder, there is index.js. Inside index.js, there is no interface available, but in the declaration file, the interfaces are available. Now what happens is, when you add declaration true inside your ts config, when you build your project will be built into two types of codes. First, your TypeScript will be transpiled to plain JavaScript for the parts of your project which are going to run on the JavaScript interpreter. Addition to that, all those parts of your code, like interfaces, your own custom types, optional types, complex classes that you create, and generics, all of these are not valid JavaScript, but they are important for TypeScript, because if your project is to be used like a library by somebody else, they would require your interfaces, they would require your generic types. So what happens is, when your project gets transpiled, part of your code becomes JS, which is going to be the code that runs, and part of your code becomes .d.ts files, which are called TypeScript declaration files. TypeScript declaration files are helpful if somebody uses your project in their TypeScript project. So in that case, they get the help of all of the declarations that you have built. And if somebody is using your project in their JavaScript project, then they can simply work with your JS files, which are pure JavaScript. There is no hint of TypeScript inside those files. So similarly, in our current project also, when we are building it, you will see that in your dist, there is person.d.ts is created, where the interface is present. So if you require this person interface later on in other TypeScript context, in that, for that purpose, the interface is remaining with us. And the person.js file is actually just a useless bit of code, because inside the person file there was nothing other than the interface. Now this is simply like an empty file out here. Okay, now this is what happens when you use TypeScript. So you can set declaration equal to true. Now mostly this is something that you want to do when you are working on a library project, or you're creating some framework which other people would be using. You would prefer to use declaration equal to true. Always keep in mind that setting declaration equal to true and the allow JS option, they do not work together with each other. Okay, so if you are consuming some TypeScript libraries and part of your own code is JavaScript and part of your own code is TypeScript, in that case we can set the allow.js flag to be true, and we can write some of our files as JavaScript and convert some of them into TypeScript and create our project. If you're creating your own library and you are writing 100% of your code in TypeScript, and when you are distributing a library, you want the transpiled JavaScript to be available and your interfaces to be also available, then in that case you should have to remove allow.js as true, which means you have to write all of your files in only and only TypeScript. And then in that case, when you distribute your library, people will get your TS files as well as your JS files. Now technically, allow.js is something, it's a option that we use in the beginning for a large project if you are trying to convert code step by step from JavaScript to TypeScript. But technically, since all JavaScript code is valid as TypeScript code, you can simply run a script and convert all of your .js files into .ts files, and simply start calling it a TypeScript project, because all of your JavaScript is valid TypeScript. And then from there, you can slowly add types to your variables, add types to your functions, convert your require calls to import export calls, and so on. Okay. So for the scope of this particular webinar, I think I'm just covering only till here. Any particular thing any of you would like to ask about whatever was covered, like basics of TypeScript or using TypeScript in a Node.js project? Anything that you would want to ask, I'd be love to take those questions, and after that we'll just end this webinar. Okay. Yeah, okay, so Anirban and Harshit, so that's a good question. How we can, start working on open source projects. So, two things to it. First of all, I would suggest you to create some of your own open source project first. That gets you an idea of how an open source project is maintained in the first place, and after that you would be in a better situation to understand other open source projects also, and get an idea of how those are maintained and where you can start contributing to them. Okay, so as an example, I'll just give you like this particular project that I was talking about, this express.ga middleware. Okay, this is a library that I have created. It is open source, and okay, it gets some nominal downloads. 6-7 people use it every day. Okay, so that's like not a very heavily used project, but okay, fine, at least 150 people every month are using my library, so at least for some people it's solving some purpose. Now, how I came about to create this project in the first place, uh, at coding loss itself, there are a lot of node.js projects we run, and if you are running a website like on the front end, adding Google Analytics support is very easy. Actually, there is a JavaScript snippet that is available on the Google Analytics page. You just simply copy paste it onto your front end project, and Google Analytics starts running. But if you are serving pages over Node.js, like using HBS or using express.static, in that case, where do you put your Google Analytics code? Especially like if you do not even have express.static, if you simply have HBS files, so all the data is getting rendered from the server. Or say for example, you have an API server. Now the server only returns JSON data, so there is no place for you to add any browser level JavaScript to create Google Analytics events. So for that, what I wanted to create was something like a basic middleware for Express. It will be just a middleware. You add it in any of your routes, and it will create Google Analytics events. Okay. We are using that in account.codingloss.com. Like, we get analytics of how many people log into it, and how many people log out of it, like all of that stuff. So I simply created this project, and it's a very simple one. I'll just open that project and show that. So this is a very simple project. It's a single file. Okay, it's not even as complex as some of the apps that we have made in class. It's not even as complex as that. It's very simple project. It's written in TypeScript though, so the code might look quite a lot, but it's very simple. There is this function called express.ga. What it does is it returns a middleware. Okay, it takes a string and it creates a middleware. This middleware has rec, res, and next, and whenever this middleware is used, it creates a page view. A page view is simply a function available in the Google Analytics SDK. It creates, like when you go to Google Analytics, it shows how many people visited your page, right? So this creates a new page view, and we return this middleware from this function. That's it. That's all that we do. Okay. And how to basically use this, I've written a test as well. Create a express server and app.use express.ga, give a UI code. That's basically how you use it. I created a readme file for that as well. Okay. It just tells you how to use that. Usage is defined like this. Create an app, and that's how you use it. So I just created this, and I have now, when you create an open source project, you understand that you want to publish your project, you have to create a readme so that people know what it does. I have created tests so that when somebody views my project, they know that my code is completely tested, it entirely works. Okay, I know that my code works because of the test that I have written like this. Okay, so I publish this project. Now if somebody sends a pull request to my project, so then automatically there are certain expectations I have from that person. I would want the person to maintain the coding standards that I have been following. Obviously, I would want that person to properly comment the code that he has written so that I am able to understand what he is adding to my repository. And even before he sends that pull request, what I would expect is that he creates an issue on my project and tells that, you know, this feature needs to be added or this bug needs to be solved. And maybe he has a little less understanding of my project, so he tells me that okay, so and so bug exists on my code, and then I can tell that person, you know, maybe what you're thinking is not a bug, it's a feature. No, typical developer response. But like that. So and then I can tell him that okay, yeah, that's a valid point, we can add this feature, and like that. So let me just show you another library that I have recently. Somebody created a issue on that. So obviously the first step is that there was this library of mine and somebody wanted to contribute to that. How was he able to do that? Obviously because he tried to use this project. That's like step one. You want to become an open source contributor, you have to use somebody's project, and you find out that there is something lacking, or something does not work, something you can add. So this person made a comment that, you know, this it is better if the state that I save is a reduced state. So I asked him that why exactly do you want it to be reduced state, any particular use case that you can give. I asked him and he gave me an example, and I told him something else in return, and he gives me so I told him that can you give me a specific example where you require something like that, and this guy has given me a response like that. Okay, and then there are two things that can happen. Either, you know, I figure out that his requirement is genuine and I add that functionality to my own project. In that case also, that person has contributed to the project in some way, because he figured out a bug, he told me how his requirements are, what he needs to fix, and he contributed that, and I actually wrote the code. Or I could tell him that, you know, you can add that functionality to my project. He can make a pull request and he adds that functionality, right? So the first step would always be, you know, actually using that project, because you can never contribute to a project that you have no use of. Okay, so for example, you are a Firefox user and you want to contribute code to Chrome, that is not going to work out. You have to be a daily user of Chrome, and then only you can contribute code to the Chromium repository. That's the first step. Second, you will need to, you know, go to the open source project, look at the issues or whatever option that they have in uh, whatever, they have an issue tracker or they have a discussion forum. So you discuss what your issue is or what feature you want, and you make sure that, you know, you and the developers are on board. They understand, like, you understand each other. You tell them that this is what you want, and then they can tell you that okay, this feature we want to implement it, you can go ahead and implement it yourself, send us a pull request. Or they can tell you that we are already on the way, we are implementing it, this is work in progress, so you need not work on it, within the next few months this will be implemented by us automatically. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you can do it either way. And then after that discussion, if it goes the positive way, they say that, you know, you can contribute it yourself if you want to, and you start working on that project and you publish it. Make sure that it's properly commented. If that project already had some unit tests written, so you add unit tests for the part of the code you added, so that the net code coverage does not get reduced of that code that you contributed. And that is like step one. You then just use more and more open source projects, find more and more problems with them, start contributing, and that's how you grow. And maybe you can have some of your own libraries you create, and then other people might contribute to that, and that's how basically you grow in the open source community. I hope that answers, or is like anything specifically you want to ask about the open source topic?
I think where we should start.
To start with open source, I don't know. I mean, no, you could start off with the usual libraries that you're using. To take a look at SQLize or Express or Socket.io, and just study those projects. That is also a good exercise to do. Just go to the GitHub repository of them, look at the issues that they have, see how they are getting worked on. Apart from that, you can go to this website called awesome.re. So this is literally like the index of the open source web completely. It is a collection of a lot of lists of projects that are available in multiple platforms. So for example, there is Node.js inside this list. So we go to Node.js. This gets to awesome Node.js, and inside awesome Node.js there are different kinds of lists for different stuff. For example, compression. Okay, so you go to compression, and these are all libraries that are used for compression in Node.js. So you start off with awesome.re. Awesome.re is like the place from where you can find out all open source projects, links to all open source projects all over the entire software ecosystem. Click any particular platform, select Node.js or Python or Android or something like that. Look at the subsections, like these are network related libraries, these are compression libraries, these are database libraries. Okay, so you look at all the there is SQLize, there is Bookshelf, Mongoose. These are all ORMs for Node.js. Take a look at them. At the end of the day, I think even before you are able to start contributing to open source, you'll have to create some of your projects of your own. When you create more and more projects, you use more and more open source libraries. You find problems in them, and you start fixing those problems in them, and that's how your open source journey really starts. And then I know you get more confident. You are able to build small projects in 2-3 days yourself. Then you will have some of your own personal itches, like you want to create a light mode and a dark mode for a ebook reader. So you can create your own app and your own ebook reader app, enable dark mode and light mode in it. While you're doing that, your own project can become a famous open source project someday, or you might be using some other libraries in that. You might be able to make some changes into that. It's like that. So just building more and more projects is the answer to both learning and to getting started with open source projects. So there's this link I also posted into the chat right now. Okay, you do something is take a look at that. That is a getting started kind of tutorial for Vue.js. Yeah, I will upload the code. I'll definitely do that. So that link is basically a getting started video on Vue.js. Vue.js is a very up and coming front end framework. It is built by Ivan Yu. Ivan Yu was earlier a architect at Google. He was one of the architects of AngularJS framework. He left Google and he had started building his own front end framework. It's Vue.js, and right now it is the second most popular front end framework after React. Okay, a lot of big organizations are starting to use Vue.js, and it creates it has a very nice way of creating components. You can create single file components in .vue file. You can add HTML, JavaScript, and CSS into a single file, and those are like modular components. You can build your app in form of components. So you can take a look at that video, get an idea of how you can create front-end projects. So I have shown an example of a to-do list. You can make more complex things. Maybe in the near future I will add some more complex examples using Vue.js as well. Vue.js also, you can use either pure JS for Vue.js, so you can use TypeScript also when working with Vue.js. So it's like if you are starting off with front-end frameworks, you want to just begin with you have no prior experience with Angular or React or anything like that, Vue is a very nice front-end framework to begin with. It's very easy for the beginners, so I'd recommend that to you. The code for this project right now, I'll just upload it. It will be available to you on I will make it available on this URL. So cb.lk slash so I will put that up on cb.lk/tslive gh. You can check that out. I will add that to the description of this video as well after I uploaded it. It would be available both the earlier code of the try when you are trying out TypeScript, and this one of the Express app with TypeScript. I'll just upload that. It will be available to you on this repository. Okay. So I'll just sign off here. Okay, I don't think anybody has any other questions. Thank you for those who are watching it right now and those who will be watching this in future.